Good morning, good evening, or whenever you pick this up. In this short video, and I haven't got that much time because of the time YouTube allows, I'm going to try to explain that there are more complexities into the end of the ancient civilization, the advanced civilizations that were on the planet, the great mystery everyone is trying to unravel before the end of the last ice age. How old and how long that civilization has been here is even a bigger mystery if we take into account the knowledge they knew about the astronomy and astrology. Took prodigious amount of time to accumulate to have such exact knowledge of the geography and geometry of that. Now, that's something to consider. To me, that's a bigger part of the mystery than anything else. How long they were there, how often did it happen, and anyway, the end of the last ice age, what caused it? There are things on the net, people saying that it was a meteor or comet what broke up 12,800 years ago, people like Graham Hancock, and that are speculating this, and it's only merely speculation. You cannot have an exact, no one can actually know, because there are no records. What I'm going to suggest is, and there's also people saying that, I'm in Australia and we have flies. Atlantis had machines what caused, and they knew about frequency, which they must have done to carve and move the stones, and therefore a little bit what like Tesla came up against, involved with, and therefore he had the power of using it to commercialize it, taken off him for security reasons by the American government. That massive amount of energy and free energy everyone desires may not be as good and a wonderful thing to have amongst the world that may be overrun by anyone who wants to take over using weapons of mass destruction like that. Sometimes things are best left not known, and there's that part of it. There's part of it that is it a myth or is it fantasy? But besides that, let's just have a look at ordinary plate tectonics, and then they have the Earth is a lunar solar gravitational pump, which as they move around, and as the Earth moves around the Sun and the moon moves around the Earth, it affects like a tidal pull on the crust of the Earth, helps move the tectonic plates around because of that movement, that oscillation, and also that tidal pull goes deep into the Earth as well. It's not just on the surface of the Earth. That then affects the dynamo, the dynamics, or the dynamo which is in between the North and South Pole, and occasionally flips the poles. Now, what I am presuming, and they're going to presume, and I can only do it because it's difficult to actually know for certain, but I'm going on evidence that I know is a fact. That is that the earthquake in Christchurch, whenever that was, what destroyed Christchurch in New Zealand, I predicted accurately there would be cyclones off Cairns in the east of Australia, because I understand that there's heat given off in the along the tectonic plate subduction zones that then is moved into vector currents into the oceans, and that affects the cyclones or the weather, and because the oceans affect the weather. Now, this is something that's not taken into consideration, it seems, by science or climatologists, that the oceans are affecting the weather from below as much as the sun is affecting it from above. But all the same, the sun is affecting the weather from below because it's affecting the there's a tidal pull on the Earth, so it's all one system. But when the ice built up, to try and simplify this, when the Earth, the tectonic plates are a series of sequential arches that are counterleaving each other, and the subduction zones and all that, that's what it is. Earth is a series of arches. It's not a ball, it's a series of arches that are counterweighted on each other by various continental weights. The Antarctic, the Andes, the Rockies, the Himalayas, all etc. play a balancing role upon the Earth's crust itself. They have different ways of affecting it risen or lowered or whatever, depending on what's going on at the time in the sequence and cycles which there. When we understand that, we understand that the crust was, when the Ice Age was there for thousands and thousands of years, it built 2 miles of ice upon the northern lands and upon the bed of the sea as well. Then that would have pressed that part of the crust right down. That would have been a massive pressure upon the crust itself. Then as it began to thaw 20,000 years ago or so, the way it began to thaw again, the crust was springing back up, and I'm suggesting this in itself was the cause of the cataclysm that destroyed the ancient civilizations, amongst other matters. It could have been, there's a number of things that could have happened together that then destroyed the civilizations that were there in the past. And that is, as the crust springs back up, or if the crust was pressed down, then the other arch is spread. When it may have actually collapsed somewhere, the crust may have collapsed, and that was when an arch collapses, it spreads. When it spreads, it spreads cataclysmically, massive forces, and it pushes the other arch out, and the other arch then erupts upwards. If you build arches, which I have done as a mason, build arches. You build one arch. If that collapses, it will push the other arch up, right, and will destroy both arches. Now, I'm suggesting that, and it's only speculation, that when somehow seawater got into the earth at some stage, when the earth crust collapsed or made a big fissure in it, was a big enough fissure to allow seawater in, massive millions of gallons of seawater, that then exploded with fantastic force, throwing magma out into the sky across the area. People are saying a comet. There's evidence of a comet from North America, Europe, down through to Egypt, or wherever. There's evidence because of nano diamonds. And I'm saying where the spread is so far, the spread of that is so far, I'm saying there's a multiple effect of an awful lot of lumps of magma, massive lumps of magma shooting into the sky from somewhere in maybe the Atlantic. Woof, all erupting up, the biggest volcanic action. Right? The massive volcanic action, maybe from the mid-Atlantic and possibly on the on the west coast of America, where that subduction plate is there. But that shot up into the sky multiple lumps of magma, excuse me, and then that spread, they fled not just in small lumps, not in singular lumps, but in many different. They broke up and scattered across the Earth's surface to where it's indicated there was a comet. That there was a comet is purely speculation, but it doesn't. The comet idea does not necessarily wash. It doesn't spread. The comet has an impact in it, and the impact of a comet is massive, and affects the planet in a way. But does it affect the planet the same as what would a massive volcanic action, what was basically magma shot up into the sky, 5-10 miles up in the sky, maybe 15 miles up more, because of the massive explosion if sea had gone into the onto the molten subsurface of the Earth, all boiling because of the pressures of thousands of years of pressure because of the crust, the ice on the crust would have put pressure and gasified the substrain of the subterranean regions of the Earth. Now, and I'm not a geologist, I don't pretend to be to know all the terms, so it doesn't matter. The point, and it's my experience as a refractory engineer and working in furnaces and working in building arches, which allowed me to observe and relate that to tectonic plate movements, etc., which allows me then to speculate that because I've seen direct evidence this in steelworks where I've seen big explosions caused by water if steel is poured, molten steel, and slag is poured on water, there you get a massive explosion and things can shoot up in the sky a very long way. It can shoot big lumps, 2 kilowatt, 200 weight pieces of metal into the sky, hundreds of feet. So we can speculate millions of tons of gallons of water into the oceans through some fissure that had caused because one plate had collapsed, another plate had erupted upwards in the sea that sucked, in the mid-Atlantic ridge, that sucked water into it, and then that destroyed Atlantis and everything else and deformed the planet. So we don't really know if in my opinion, we do not really know how shallow that difference between the land and sea before and now. That's pure speculation because of the way the oceans press down onto the crust itself and all that. It's very, very difficult to say what was the shape of the land before the cataclysm happened, and that it's a speculation purely that there was 300 foot difference or whatever it was. That's speculation because of the crust deformed and it's different and it's hard to measure it. There's no real way of measuring it. But I'm saying that's in a rough, you know, without the means to describe it with a chalkboard, that is a rough assumption, if you like, presumption, that what happened because of the earth itself was shook by the massive amount of ice built up on the north, then depressed the crust, and then as it was thawed out it started to spring back up, and that springing back up distorted the arch of the other tectonic plates across the mid-Atlantic ridge, and that, I'm estimating, that blew up and that wiped out Atlantis, wiped out all the civilizations around Cuba and all that, and that was the great cause and disrupted everything. And Graham Hancock has wonderfully described it in his book Fingerprints of the Gods, a wonderful book. But if you go back to his book, in his original speculation, then you have to consider his original speculation indicates what I'm suggesting. The idea looking for, because I found nanodiamonds, means that there's something impacted the earth with a great deal of heat and pressure, which then caused carbon to be turned into diamonds. Well, that, if it's spread right through, if it's in 3 or 4 specific areas, those nanodiamonds, yes, you could say it was common. But if it's spread over many different areas, and there's all that glass in the Sahara and stuff like that, then you have to say, what is the other possible reason? And the other possible cause of that actually is a bunch of hundreds of pieces of magma flown into the air with great force, and then poof, down it comes, and then that also would again cool the planet down because the amount of steam and that into the air and the dust and clouds went into the air and then suddenly created the mini dryers, and then eventually the earth settled down again sometime later. Anyway, that's a rough sketch, if you like, and it can be done in a lot more detail, but I don't have the time here to do that. But that's a rough sketch of what I imagine happened due to the evidence we have in relation to earthquakes and tsunamis, and that then cause cyclones and what have you, indicating. And El Nino, La Nina, I suspect also is within this category of description of the earth dynamics being a solar lunar gravitational pump. And I suspect there's something there, because the earth's a dynamo. You have to understand, in terms of the earth, is a dynamo. It bubbles from the inside out and it gives off the heat, and that it's a dynamo. And that dynamo suddenly can get out of kilter because of all sorts of pressures on it. You know, you're changing the shape of the dynamic field. You actually then will start to say cause all sorts of, if you like, pressures within the gravitational forces of the earth itself, and the magnetic forces of the fields of the earth itself will be distorted. And once the distortion gets to a certain point, then you get a foil flip. That's another speculation itself. I said I've only got short time with these videos, but that is something to consider as a counter to the idea there was a comet, because I have my doubts about that. It's one way of saying, well, what it's saying, oh, there's nano diamonds, so yes, there must have been an impact. Well, I'm saying the impact came from the Earth itself. Magma shot into the sky, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of it, and in small and different sized lumps, impacting the Earth and causing the nano diamonds. And of course, the rest we all can all understand what happened, the cataclysm, and what is of great interest to so many people. Thank you. My name's Graham, and I hope people find this of some interest.